Saigo's vision, a different path for modern Japan. For Saigo and his men, the choice to die by the sword rather than adapt to a changing world seems at once noble and futile. But this perspective misses something crucial. They weren't fighting simply to preserve their privileges or even their way of life. Many were fighting for a different vision of what modern Japan could become. Saigo didn't oppose all modernization. During his time in government, he supported universal education, military reforms, and industrial development. What he resisted was the wholesale abandonment of Japanese traditions and the uncritical adoption of Western values. In today's terms, he might be called a selective modernizer, someone who believed Japan could adopt technology and useful institutions from the West while maintaining its cultural soul. In this sense, the rebels at Shiroyama were not simply the last guardians of a dying tradition, but early participants in a debate that continues in Japan and many other non-Western societies. How to modernize without Westernizing. How to join the global economy without losing cultural identity. When viewed this way, Saigo's last stand takes on a more complicated meaning. He lost the military battle but raised questions that Japan is still answering today. Let's step back from the grand historical narrative and look more closely at what it meant to be a samurai in the final days of the class. Contrary to popular imagination, most samurai in the late Tokugawa period were not primarily warriors. After centuries of relative peace under shogunate rule, many had become administrators, scholars, artists, or bureaucrats. Some were impoverished, living on meager stipends despite their theoretical social status. Their identity was complex. While martial skills remained important, educated samurai valued literary accomplishment just as highly. Many wrote poetry, studied philosophy, or practiced calligraphy with the same dedication they applied to swordsmanship. This duality was expressed in the samurai ideal of bunbu, the pen and the sword, which held that a true warrior should be equally skilled in cultural and martial pursuits. Saigo himself embodied this ideal. His calligraphy was renowned, he wrote thoughtful philosophical essays, and he had a deep knowledge of Chinese classics and Buddhist teachings. Yet he could also inspire thousands to follow him into battle. This complexity challenges the one-dimensional Hollywood portrayal of samurai as merely skilled swordsmen. The historical reality was far richer, and helps explain why samurai values proved so adaptable even after the sword itself became obsolete. The sophisticated ethical system developed by the samurai over centuries, emphasizing loyalty, integrity, self-discipline, and respect for learning, provided resources for Japanese society to navigate the traumatic transition to modernity. Consider this remarkable fact. Japan was the only non-Western nation to fully industrialize in the 19th century and become a major world power. While other ancient civilizations like China, India, and the Ottoman Empire struggled under Western colonialism or influence, Japan transformed itself rapidly enough to maintain independence. This extraordinary achievement cannot be separated from the samurai legacy. The same disciplined, education-valuing elite that had once governed through feudal structures now directed the creation of factories, schools, banks, and constitutional government. But this transformation came with profound costs. The beautiful, complex, hierarchical world of traditional Japan, with its elaborate arts, regional diversity, and ritualized interactions, faced relentless pressure from standardization, industrialization, and the harsh logic of international competition. Something precious was indeed lost at Shiroyama, even as something new and powerful was being born. The elegance of the sword gave way to the efficient brutality of the machine gun. The regional lord was replaced by the distant bureaucrat. The handcrafted gave way to the mass-produced. This tension between preservation and transformation, between reverence for tradition and the necessities of progress, would define much of Japan's subsequent history. After the Meiji era, Japan continued its remarkable rise, defeating China in the Sino-Japanese War of 1894-95 and Russia in 1905. By the 1930s, it had become an industrial and military power capable of challenging even the United States, a path that would lead to the disasters of World War II. Throughout this period, the image of the samurai remained a powerful cultural touchstone, used and sometimes misused by various political movements. The militarists who led Japan to war in the 1930s and 40s explicitly invoked samurai traditions to justify their actions. After Japan's defeat in 1945, there was a conscious attempt to break with militant interpretations of the samurai past. The American occupation sought to demilitarize Japanese culture and promote democratic values. Yet even then, certain aspects of the samurai tradition proved resilient, particularly those emphasizing personal integrity, duty to community, and disciplined self-improvement. These values helped fuel Japan's astonishing economic recovery from wartime devastation. By the 1980s, Japan had become an economic superpower, with the world's second-largest economy and global companies that set new standards for quality and efficiency. Many business analysts pointed to distinctly Japanese management practices, emphasizing loyalty, consensus, and long-term thinking as key to this success. These corporate values didn't emerge from nowhere. They had deep roots in Japan's samurai past, adapted for a new era. Today's Japan continues to negotiate its relationship with samurai heritage. Modern Japanese citizens are far removed from the feudal world of their ancestors, yet cultural echoes remain remarkably strong. Walk through Tokyo's gleaming high-tech districts, and you'll find businessmen unwinding after work by practicing traditional sword techniques in martial arts dojos. Visit a Japanese corporation, and you might see new employees undergoing training that explicitly references Bushido values. Contemporary Japanese pop culture, from anime to video games, frequently features samurai themes or characters who embody samurai-like codes of honor. Films by directors like Akira Kurosawa have brought samurai stories to global audiences, finding universal themes in these distinctly Japanese tales. The samurai aesthetic, minimalist, precise, attentive to detail, continues to influence Japanese design, architecture, and craft. Even Japan's renowned cuisine, with its emphasis on perfectionism and presentation, shows traces of samurai cultural influence. For modern Japanese, the samurai past is neither something to be uncritically celebrated nor entirely rejected. It's a complex heritage containing both inspiring ideals and cautionary examples of how those ideals can be distorted. What's remarkable is how aspects of this heritage have been continually reinterpreted to remain relevant in radically different circumstances. The samurai emphasis on self-discipline, for instance, has been successively adapted to the needs of industrialization, wartime mobilization, post-war reconstruction, and now the challenges of a post-industrial economy. This adaptability suggests something about why the samurai continue to fascinate us, both in Japan and internationally. They represent not just an exotic historical curiosity, but a sophisticated approach to reconciling individual excellence with collective responsibility, tradition with innovation, and spiritual values with practical necessities. Let's return one last time to the battlefield at Shiroyama. The exact spot where Saigo Takamori fell is now marked by a small stone monument. It sits in a peaceful park overlooking Kagoshima Bay, with the active volcano Mat Sakurajima smoking in the distance. Visitors leave small offerings, cups of sake, incense, or poems, in honor of the last samurai. Nearby stands a much larger monument, a bronze statue of Saigo in casual dress, walking his beloved dog. This isn't Saigo the warrior, but Saigo the thoughtful philosopher, the man who valued nature and simple pleasures even as he mastered the martial arts. This dual commemoration captures something essential about how modern Japan remembers its samurai past, honoring the warrior's sacrifice while also recognizing the more contemplative cultural aspects of the tradition. Each year on September 24th, a memorial service is held at Shiroyama. Descendants of both the imperial soldiers and the samurai rebels gather in reconciliation, acknowledging that both sides contributed to the complex nation Japan would become. This capacity for synthesizing apparent opposites, tradition and innovation, Eastern and Western influences, martial discipline and artistic refinement, may be the most enduring legacy of the samurai tradition. It helped Japan navigate the treacherous waters of modernization when many other ancient civilizations struggled. For Americans watching this documentary, the samurai story offers valuable perspective on our own cultural evolution. Like Japan, the United States has undergone profound transformations while striving to maintain connection to founding ideals. Both nations have had to reckon with troubling aspects of their past while drawing inspiration from their nobler traditions. The samurai experience raises questions that resonate globally. How much of our past should we preserve? How do we adapt cultural values to technological change? What does honor mean in a commercial society? How do we balance individual excellence with community responsibility? These are not merely historical questions. They are challenges each generation must answer anew. The last samurai died on Shiroyama Hill in 1877, but the values they lived by, both the admirable and the problematic, continue to shape our world in ways both visible and invisible. Their swords have been replaced by keyboards, their armor by business suits, their feudal loyalties by national and corporate identities. Yet something of their spirit, the commitment to excellence, integrity, and mastery, remains alive in Japan and increasingly resonates with people worldwide who seek meaning beyond mere consumption and entertainment. Saigo Takamori, the complicated hero who led the last samurai into battle, once wrote, "If you look at the cherry blossoms long enough, you will understand both beauty and impermanence." Perhaps this is the deepest lesson of the samurai tradition: to fully embrace life's beauty while accepting its inevitable changes and endings. To fight with full commitment for what you believe in, yet recognize that all things, even cherished traditions, must eventually transform. The samurai as a class died at Shiroyama, but their legacy lives on in modern Japan's unique blend of technological innovation and cultural preservation, in its continuous reinvention of tradition for new circumstances. When the last shots echoed over Shiroyama Hill, they marked both an ending and a beginning. The sword yielded to the gun, but the spirit behind the sword found new expressions. The warriors fell, but their ideals, refined and reinterpreted, continued to inspire. This is not merely a Japanese story, it's a human one, about how we face the inevitable winds of change while keeping faith with the best parts of our inheritance, about how traditions don't simply die, but transform, going dormant like seeds beneath winter snow, waiting for the right conditions to emerge in new forms. Seen this way, the last stand of the samurai was not a feudal gesture, but a powerful statement about the importance of remembering who we are, even as we become something new. Their defeat on the battlefield set the stage for a different kind of victory: the endurance of cultural values that transcend any particular social system or technology. In Japan today, when people speak of samurai spirit, they're not wishing for a return to feudalism or glorifying warfare. They're invoking qualities like perseverance, integrity, and excellence that remain relevant in a world the actual samurai could never have imagined. Perhaps that's why, nearly 150 years after Shiroyama, the samurai continue to capture our imagination. Their world is gone, but the questions they faced about tradition versus progress, individual excellence versus collective good, and maintaining cultural identity in a changing world, these are questions we still grapple with today. In their final battle, facing overwhelming odds with dignity and courage, the last samurai demonstrated why their values would outlive their defeat. They showed that how we face inevitable change matters as much as whether we prevail. That loss with honor can be more significant than victory without principle. This may be the most enduring lesson from Shiroyama. Traditions worth preserving find new forms even after their original vessels shatter. The samurai as a class died so that samurai values could live on in a democratized form, accessible to all Japanese rather than reserved for a privileged few. Next time you use a precision Japanese electronic device, admire minimalist Japanese design, or watch an anime character following a strict personal code. Remember, you're experiencing distant echoes of the last stand at Shiroyama, where the samurai fell so that their spirit could spread beyond the boundaries of their class. The gun defeated the sword, but the ideals that guided the swordsman's hand found new expression in the precision of the engineer, the dedication of the teacher, and the creativity of the artist. The last samurai died, but their legacy lives on in modern Japan and increasingly resonates across our interconnected world. Thank you for watching our documentary on the battle that ended the samurai. If you enjoyed this exploration of Japanese history and culture, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. Stay tuned for our upcoming videos on other fascinating aspects of Japan's rich historical tapestry. And remember, traditions never truly die. They only transform.